The Wasp Factory. Chapter 4, Part 9, The Bomb Circle. I said, "Hey," just in case they were, then felt myself being led out into the fresh air through the fire exit. I needed to go to the toilet, and with every step I took, there seemed to be more convulsion in my guts. I had this horrible vision of my body being made up almost completely of two equal-sized compartments, one holding piss and the other undigested beer, whiskey, crisps, dry roasted peanuts, spit, snot, bile, and one or two bits of fish and potatoes. Some sick part of my mind suddenly thought of fried eggs lying thick with grease on a plate surrounded with bacon, curled and scooped and holding little pools of fat. The outsides of the plate dotted with coagulated lumps of grease. I fought down the ghastly urge coming up from my stomach. I tried to think of nice things. Then, when I couldn't think of any, I determined to concentrate on what was happening around me. We were outside the Arms, walking along the pavement past the bank. Jamie on one side of me, the girl on the other. It was a cloudy night and cool. The street lights were sodium. We left the smell of the pub behind. I tried to get some of the fresh air in through my head. I was aware I was staggering slightly, lurching sporadically into Jamie or the girl, but there wasn't a great deal I could do about it. I felt rather like one of those ancient dinosaurs, so huge that they had a virtually separate brain to control their back legs. I seemed to have a separate brain for each limb, but they'd all broken off diplomatic relations. I swayed and stumbled along as best I could, trusting to luck and the two people with me. Frankly, I didn't have much faith in either. Jamie being too small to stop me if I really started to topple, and the girl being a girl. Probably too weak, and even if she wasn't, I expected she would just let me crack my skull on the pavement because women like to see men helpless. "You two always like that?" the girl said. "Like what?" Jamie said, without, I thought, the correct amount of preemptive indignation. "You up on his shoulders?" "Oh, no, that's just so I can see the band better." "Thank Christ for that. Although maybe ye went to a bog like rat." I can't do this accent. "Oh, we go into a cubicle and Frank goes into the bowl while I do it in the cistern." "You're kidding." Jamie said in a voice distorted by a grin. "I was walking along as best I could, listening to all this garbage. I was slightly annoyed at Jamie saying anything, even jokingly, about me going to the toilet. He knows how sensitive I am about it. Only once or twice he taunted me with what sounds like the interesting sport of going into the gents in the Caldame Arms, or anywhere else, I suppose, and attacking the drowning fag ends in the urinal with a stream of piss. I admit I have watched Jamie doing this and been quite impressed. The Caldame Arms has excellent facilities for the sport, having a great long gutter-like urinal extending right along the wall and half down the other, with only one drain hole. According to Jamie, the object of the game is to get a soggy fag end from wherever it is in the channel along to and down to the coverless hole, breaking it up as much as possible en route. You can score points for the number of ceramic divisions you can move the butt over, with extra for actually getting it down the hole, extra for doing it from the far end of the gutter to the hole. From the amount of destruction caused, apparently it's very hard to get the little black cone at the burned end to disintegrate, and over the course of the evening, the number of fag ends so dispatched. The game can be played in more limited form in the little bowl type individual urinals, which are more fashionable these days, but Jamie has never tried this himself, being too short that if he is to use one of those, he has to stand about a meter back from it and lob his wastewater in. Anyway, it sounds like something to make long pisses much more interesting, but it is not for me, thanks to cruel fate. Is he your brother or something? Nah, he's my friend. Say, I cannot do this dang accent. They always get like this. Oh, they always get like this. Usually on Saturday night. This is a monstrous lie, of course. I'm rarely so drunk that I can't talk or walk straight. I have told Jamie as much. Too, if I'd been able to talk, I hadn't been concentrating on putting one foot in front of the other. I wasn't so sure I was going to throw up now, but that same irresponsible, destructive part of my brain, just a few neurons probably, but I suppose there are a few in every brain, and it only takes a very small hooligan element to give the rest a bad name. Kept thinking about those fried eggs and bacon on the cold plate, and each time I almost heaved. It took an act of will to think of cool winds on hilltops, or the pattern of water shadows over wave-carved sand. Things which I have always thought epitomize clarity and freshness and help to divert my brain from dwelling on the contents of my stomach. However, I did need to have a piss even more desperately than before. Jamie and the girl were inches away from me, holding me by an arm each, being bumped into frequently, but my drunkenness had now got to such a state as the last two quickly consumed pints and an accompanying whiskey caught up with my racing bloodstream that I might as well have been on another planet for all the hope I had of making them understand what I wanted. They walked on either side of me and talking to each other, jabbering utter nonsense as though it was all so important, and I, with more brains than the two of them put together and information of the most vital nature, couldn't get a word out. There had to be a way. I tried to shake my head clear and take some more deep breaths. I steadied my pace. I thought very carefully about words and how you made them. I checked my tongue and tested my throat. I had to pull myself together. I had to communicate. I looked around as we crossed a road. I saw the sign for Union Street where it was fixed to a low wall. I turned to Jamie and then the girl. I cleared my throat and said quite clearly, I don't know if you two ever shared or indeed still do share, for that matter, for all that I know, at least mutually between yourselves, but at any rate, not including me, the misconception I once perchanced to place upon the words contained upon yonder sign, but it is a fact that I thought of the union referred to in said nomenclature delineated an association of working people, and it did seem to me at the time to be quite a socialist thing for the town fathers to call a street. It struck me that all was not yet lost as regards to the prospects for a possible peace, or at the very least ceasefire in the class war, if such acknowledgments of the worth of trade unions could find their way onto such a vulnerable and important thoroughfare sign. But I must admit I was disabused of this sadly over-optimistic notion when my father, God rest his sense of humor, informed me that it was the then recently confirmed union of the English and Scottish parliaments, the local worthies, in common with hundreds of other town councils throughout what I had until that point been an independent realm, were celebrating with such solemnity and permanence, doubtless with a view to the opportunities for profit which this early form of takeover bid offered. The girl looked at Jamie. Did he say something there? I thought he was just clearing his throat, said Jamie. Ah, thought he said something about bananas. Bananas? Jamie said incredulously. Look at the girl. Nah, he said, looking at me and shaking. She said, looking at me and shaking her head. Right enough. So much for communication, I thought. Obviously, both so drunk they didn't even understand correctly spoken English. I sighed heavily as I looked first at one and then the other while we made our slow way down the main street, past Woolworth and the traffic lights. I looked ahead and tried to think what on earth I was going to do. They helped me over to the next road, me nearly tripping as I crossed the far curb. Suddenly, I was very aware of the vulnerability of my nose and front teeth, should they happen to come into contact with the granite of Port Neal's pavements at any velocity above quite a small fraction of a meter per second. Hey, me and one of my mates have been going around the Forestry Commission tracks up in the hills, going around the 50, skidding all over the place like a speedway. Is that a fact? My God, they were still talking about bikes. Were we talking, I cannot do this accent because I barely can speak English. My mom's, if she's still up, she'll make us some tea. Your ma, It came to me in a flash. It was so obvious I couldn't imagine why I didn't see it before. I knew there was no time to lose and no point in hesitating. I was going to explode soon. So I put my head down and broke free from Jamie and the girl, running off down the street. I'd escaped due an Eric so I could find somewhere nice and quiet for a piss. Frank? Ah, for fuck's sake. Geez a break. What's they up to? No. For fuck's sake is right. The pavement was still below my feet, which were moving more or less as they were supposed to. I could hear Jamie and the girl running after me shouting, but I was already past the old chip shop and the war memorial and picking up speed. My distended bladder was helping matters, but it wasn't holding me back as much as I'd feared. Either. Frank, come back. Frank, stop. What's wrong? Frank, you crazy bastard. You'll break your neck. Let him go. No, he's my friend. Frank. I turned the corner into Bank Street, pounded down it, just missing 2 lampposts, took a sharp left into Adam Smith Street, and came to McGarvey's garage. I skidded into the forecourt and ran behind a pump, gasping and belching and feeling my head pound. I dropped my cords and squatted down, leaning back against the 5-star pump and breathing heavily as the pool of steaming piss collected on the bark rough concrete of the fuel apron. Footsteps clattered and a shadow came from the right of me. I looked around to see Jamie. Ha! He gasped, putting one hand on another pump to steady himself as he bent over a little and looked at his feet. On the other hand on a knee, his chest heaving. Here you are. He sat down on the plinth supporting the pumps and stared at the dark glass of the office for a while. I sat too, slumped against the pump, letting the last drops fall free. I stumbled back and sat down heavily on the plinth, then staggered upright and pulled my cords back up. What did you do that for? Jamie said, still panting. I waved at him, struggling to do my belt up. I was starting to feel sick again, letting magnifying wafts of pub smoke off my clothes. Getting magnified wafts of pub smoke off my clothes.